Be my last Sunday as senior minister, I don't know, because I'm taking a year to kind of just, after 26 years of ministry, taking a year to just kind of be with a different experience, and see what shows up. But you always think about your last Sunday, and I kind of had my last Sunday joke. And so it's really about this guy whose wife passed away. And, after an appropriate period of time, he was feeling lonesome. So he decided to go on a cruise. And so he went on a cruise, and it was a week-long cruise, and he happened to meet this woman on the cruise, and they struck up a friendship. And it was great, and they were able to, do things together and have dinner, and they got to know each other a little bit. And it turned out at the end of the cruise that she happened to live in the same city that he did. And so when they got back, they decided to get together, and they sort of continued this relationship, this friendship. And after a while, he was thinking, well, it needs to be more. And so he decided to have dinner with her. And so they got together for dinner, and he said, I really feel like it's time to take our relationship to the next level. And before we do that, there's something I need to tell you. And what I need to tell you is that I am a golf nut. That I eat and drink and sleep golf. That's all I think about. That's all I do. And I thought you should know that. Well, there's a kind of a pause, and finally she said, there's something I probably should tell you as well. She said, for the last 5 years, I've been a hooker. So he paused for a moment, and he looked down. Then he looked up and he said, I think I can help you with that. They say that that's in your wrists. I got you. Isn't that how life shows up? You're going down one direction, and all of a sudden, you're heading down another, right? And that's where humor shows up. Comedians always tell you that the way you create humor is to head one direction and go down another. And that's, I think for me, a lot of times, that's the experience, or that's the way my life shows up, And it's important in our experience to have a sense of humor. When those changes, the door opens, the door closes, is to be able to make that shift in a sort of lighthearted way, to realize that, we all are born and we all die. And then there's this experience in between. And we all have that same sort of fate, destiny, whatever it is. We don't know when or where or how, but in that experience in between, there's this journey that we're on. And we're on this journey collectively and individually, and we kind of move through the ups and downs and the waves and the different ways in which our life shows up. And as we move through that journey, things change and things happen, and we react and respond and we adapt. And I think that's the spiritual journey, because it only becomes the spiritual journey when we become conscious that there's more to this experience than just all the human conditions that show up. That there's a much bigger picture that we're dealing with. There's a mission that we are assigned, that we have to discover. There's a way in which we show up to bring that into expression through all the different mediums that we have, whether it be on the athletic field, or whether it be in teaching, or whether it be on the stage, or in performance, or whether it be simply taking nuts and bolts and putting them in boxes at our workplace, but yet having the opportunity to show up in a way in which we make a difference for those around us. Because we're really all in the people business, but we're also in the God business. We're in the spiritual business, because life is a spiritual journey. My experience in ministry, has been quite amazing. It's taken me to different places, and I've been minister of 3 different churches, in Reno, Seattle, and then here. And all of them have been unique and different and powerful. This particular church has been an amazingly wonderful experience. I decided that I earned it. I earned it. So I showed up, and there's a loving, friendly, embracing energy here. And it's not me. It was here when I got here. And I only stepped into it because that was in me. That was what I was drawn to. And you drew me because of that, because there was that compatibility. There was that desire to have that experience. And so that's the way our life shows up. If we stop and listen and think about the experiences that we're having and the journey that we're on and wherever it takes us and how it works and the ups and downs and the difficulties and challenges. A couple of years ago, well, several years ago actually, I had the experience of working with my parents who were having some really difficult challenges in their life. They were going through, the experience of aging. And I remember my father-in-law used to say all the time, he says, "Don't get old." He says, "Don't get old." And I would say, "Well, what's the alternative, And what he was really saying was, I think, was don't get old-minded. Don't give up. Don't stop. Don't lose your focus on life. And so that sort of kept me focused. But I remember when my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she was starting into that journey. And if you, I don't know what that's like, because I haven't, maybe in another lifetime I was there, but I certainly haven't experienced it in this time. But I don't know what that journey is, but I know that it's not easy. And I sort of presume that it must be like getting caught in quicksand and just sinking slowly, and that it's scary. And so I remember kind of embracing that and looking at that and kind of dealing with the dynamics around it. And of course they were, as most of us are, they were very resistant to making any changes in their life. They didn't want to move from their home because my father had built the house, and so everything in it was him. And so he did not want to leave that. And so we went through a lot of challenges and difficulties, and we brought in caregivers, and my nephew and his girlfriend stayed with him for a while, and we just kind of followed through that whole process. And then I remember finally it was just the caregiver we had left, had quit, and it was in August of 2005, I think. August of 2005, and I was standing there, and my father was sitting there, and I finally looked at him and I said, "Well, I think it's time." And he looked at me and he said, "You're right. It's time." And we both knew exactly what I was talking about. It was time to move into a different place where they could get the help that they needed on a daily basis. And so from that moment on, within 2 weeks, they were in an assisted living community, and they were getting the help that they needed. And it wasn't an easy transition, but I remember once he said that, it just flowed, because that decision was there. And that guided me, that led me to start looking at this whole community of seniors that exists that I didn't know about. Because most of us have no idea of the community that exists out there that is there to support those who are aging, those who are dealing with elderly issues in terms of their physical body and the challenges that they have. And so little by little I sort of found my way into that, and I ended up working with a company that basically does that, finds care and housing situations for seniors that are having challenges, And initially I thought, well, that's a good way to earn some money to help pay for my kids' college. Because I was even though I was full-time minister here, beyond that, I felt like, okay, I needed to kind of expand myself, and I like to do more than one thing. I'm sort of multi-dimensional in my way in which I approach it. Always been that way. So I started doing that, and I found that it was an incredible ministry.